before Sunday, and this panel's called Don Lawrence Connection, as you will get to see. So the first question is, can you tell us a bit about yourself? Any, your history in comics, your favourite things that you've worked on?
You want to go first?
Oh. I'll try and keep it brief because we've only got 45 minutes. I'm Liam Sharp. I basically trained with Don and was his apprentice for a year back in '86. And obviously transformed my life and informed a huge amount of what I do. There's a thing called the corridor that I did a domestica course, which is pretty much the biggest takeaway I took from working with Don. And I based the whole course on one particular episode, but I'll tell you about that later.
Yep, I'm Chris Weston. I had a slightly different deal with Don Lawrence than Liam had. I think Liam is specifically an apprentice because he was training you to be an assistant. But with me, that was never on the cards. He just wanted to help me, spend a year with him, learn a few things, and help me put forward a portfolio so I could get work. In return, I had to pay him 10% of everything I earned during my first year, which, probably went nowhere near recompensing him for the time he put in teaching me. There's a strange story about how I discovered Don Lawrence living near me in Jedington. Because when I was small, I was one of those weird kids that read comics, and then back in those days, the comics didn't have credit boxes on them. But I was one of those kids that just had the ability to, tell different artist styles, and I'd always think of them as like Ron Smith for me. Before I discovered Ron Smith, he was the King Cobra artist, and obviously Don Lawrence was the Trigië Empire. Oh, it's the Trigië Empire artist. I remember seeing Storm in a shop. Oh, it's the Trigië Empire artist. I only really discovered his name through 2000 AD, because I remember there used to be like a Rojal's book review thing that was in the comic every couple of months. And there's one issue, they had that, Rojal's, the robot, gave a review of the Hamlin, big thick Hamlin book, which collected the Trigië Empire. And that's what it said, it's drawn by, I think it was like, and it's drawn by a bloke called Don Lawrence, and it's flipping amazing, or something like that. And that's how I discovered his name.
I've got to chip in with that because my similar experience, I knew him as the Trigië Empire artist. I didn't know his name, and when it was actually through a friend of a friend that I heard that Don was looking for an assistant. I was at college in Eastbourne, and basically I got this script and said try out. It's like I didn't know who the artist was or anything. I drew the page of script or painted it, and then we went over to meet Don, and we went in the studio and he pulled open the drawers and it was like Trigië Empire art. It was like dawned on me there and then in his studio who I was with, and he was like my absolute hero when I was a kid. So I was like, holy shit, it's Don! It's like, I can't believe it. I just felt like I'd landed the mother lode of all like karma in the world, it was amazing.
That cover there is literally the first bit of Don Lawrence artwork I ever saw. I met, what was he, 75, so I would have been 6, and my dad took me to a newsagent. My dad read comics as well, which is good. It was a nice thing that we shared, that we would buy comics and discuss them. That's probably why I'm such a big comic nerd. Anyway, we was in this newsagent in 75, and I saw that, and I said, Dad, please, can I have this comic? And he was like, I'm not sure, and he picked it up and he flipped through it, and I could see his face all cringy. And then he got to the Trigië Empire strip and said, yeah, we're buying this, kid.
funnily enough, it was my dad that brought me copies of Vulcan home as well.
It's Vulcan that did it for you guys.
Well, no, I'd seen it in the Look and Learn magazine. So and again, I would have been 9 too when I discovered 8 or 9 Look and Learn magazine in the local library. So my parents had dropped me off there to go shopping, and I discovered the Look and Learns and just spent ages trying to put them all in order, and then I'd find some that weren't done, and I'm like, what's this? This actually, I've looked at it since, it's really nice. It's not done, and I only wanted done.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I've got a run of Look and Learn. The artists change as they think. So that leads us on to, who was this Don Lawrence person? Can you tell us some thoughts about his work and what he worked on? Any favourites that you had?
Well, I only really, as I say, I discovered him through the Trigië Empire. I wasn't aware of his work before that. And in fact, when Warrior came out, in the first issue of Warrior, which brought back Marvel Man, they had a little article all about Marvel Man, and that's where I discovered that that was Don's first comic.
And that's Marvel Man there?
Yeah, that was his first professional job. He'd just come out, was it St. Martin's College of Art, I think?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, he always said at the time, there was like legal wrangles about who owned Captain Marvel or Marvel Man. And he'd be like, I think I've got a claim. And he was always like in two minds about whether he should challenge it, because he basically did the design, came up with it.
Yeah.
And he had more right than anybody, probably, but he never pursued it because he just didn't want to get into the legal kind of nonsense that was going on with all of that.
Yeah, yeah. I remember him saying they asked him to do a tryout page, and so he did a picture of like Marvel Man flying past a skyscraper, and he said, "Oh, but it took me like 2 days because I drew every single window in the skyscraper." And I thought, that's where I get it from then.
Yeah, we're both trying to be like as crazy detailed as Don, and but Don had spent like two weeks on a page. So.
Yeah.
That's me very young with Don at 17 in Holland at the first convention I ever went to at the top, and that's me much older. When I went back and worked with him for the Von Neumann machine, his last Storm album, I helped with the last 10 pages. He was struggling a bit by then. He was a bit depressed. Because he could see it was coming to an end, and although he really wanted it to be over, it was still like hard knowing that that's going. And he'd had gone blind in one eye, which was really, obviously distressing, and caused some issues with the depth of field, and he could see around the edge, but not in the middle. So that was a rough old time. But I mean, I felt very privileged to be able to go back and sort of close the circle and actually do some more work with them at the end.
It was great.
And I'll try and find the pages that you were talking about. Let's move forward.
Oh yeah, there we go. These are from the Von Neumann machine. Well, the one on the left two are. The one on the far left is fully me painting over Don's pencils. The next one along is both of us. So Don did very obviously the top panel with the spaceship, and I did all the rest actually. And I did the pencils for the Marilyn pictures too, because he thought I did better likenesses than him, which is high praise. So yeah, that's a complete mishmash. Those two are almost gathering all. The one on the far end is when, for a while, I was going to take over Storm. And that was based on his layout. He wanted it to not look like him. That's the funny thing. He at that point, he was like, I want you to take over, but I don't want it to look, I want it to have the spirit, but not be like a slavish replica of my work. So I was trying to do that. And I loved him for that. That's what I thought was a lovely sort of point of view. The problem was, when you're trying to follow someone who's spending 2 weeks on a page, he had a massive legacy of art and all the other issues, so he could afford to spend 2 weeks on a page. We figured out that if I was going to spend out 2 weeks on a page, I was earning less than his cleaner. So it wasn't viable. I had a family.
Were you in the studio with him?
No, that's after we moved to Derby.
Oh right.
So how did the cooperation work? Did you go into his studio and do some?
No, I mean for the Von Neumann machine, yes, I was fully there. So I'd get the train into Polegate every day, and Liz would pick me up, and we'd work together. So I spent a good few months on the Von Neumann machine. But the one after that was going to be scripted by Dave Gibbons, co-plotted by me and Dave, all laid out by Don, and we did about 4 pages, and it just wasn't viable. And also there was a big shift going on in publishing. I mean, weirdly, Des Skin got involved in that. I came up with this idea that because things were shifting digitally, you didn't have to letter every page, and I thought, wouldn't it be great if we could get a bunch of magazines all over Europe that we could do the same sort of thing with 2 pages and get everyone to pay a little bit, which would fund it. But it was just a massive thing to try and organise. It was a really good idea though. Yeah. And Des Skin was saying, well, I'll put 2 pages in Comics International, and we'll see. You know, we'll just send the page files out, and each of the individual magazines could have lettered it, but still a great idea. I've still got a bit of PTSD around that not happening. It was a bit heartbreaking.
Going back a bit, there's a kind of a macabre element to how I actually met Don, because as I said, I was a complete fanboy of the Trigië Empire artist, and he was like my favourite artist. And then one day I thought, well, I really want to meet him, so there's only one way I can do it. I'm going to have to write to Jim and fix it. Don't worry, this doesn't get any darker. And so I wrote, "Dear Jim, please could you fix it for me to meet Don Lawrence?" But before I posted the letter, I was in the dinner queue at school, and there was a new kid, and I was just chatting to him. I said, "What does your dad do then?" And he said, "Oh, he's a comic book artist." I said, "Oh yeah, which one?" He said, "It's Don Lawrence." And I was like, "What?" And I didn't get to meet Julie Savills. It's a really, it's a sad end. And so I basically pestered this kid, "Please can I meet your dad? Please can I meet your dad?" And eventually he sort of organised it. So my dad took me around to meet Don, and there was a funny moment where Don, I don't think Don quite believed, because I don't know, how old would I have been then? 11 or 12, and I don't think he believed I was just such a huge fan. And he said, "Well, because the first thing he asked me is, well, where do you know my work from then?" I said, "Well, I've got it right here with me." And I took out all my Vulcans, and I even had my copies of the Valiant and Vulcan, which, when the Vulcan merged with the Valiant, they reprinted the Trigië Empire at A5 size in black and white. And it wasn't even on glossy paper, so like massive. Do you remember how old newspapers used to have massive dots? It looked like that. And I said, "Oh, I didn't like it like this. I thought it was rubbish when it was like this." My dad said, "Christopher, you need to be a bit more diplomatic." Yeah, and then basically I just every now and then I just asked him if I could come up to his studio and watch him work, and you know, he was incredibly generous with his time, really. Yeah, I'm a very lucky person, really.
Did you meet Liam at that time? Because Liam, would you like to?
We sort of were both in East School, so I was at college there, at boarding school, and Chris was there. And
Yeah.
we did sort of meet. Chris was actually, I think it was about 15 or 16, he was washing pots in a local cafe that I used to frequent. So I've known Chris longer than anybody else in the comic industry. We let go back the furthest.
I loved that job.
Yeah.
It was amazing. I'm not joking. It's some of the happiest times of my life working in that cafe. I used to.
And of course, Sue Corbett used to work there, who was Harry Corbett's daughter from
Step-Town Son.
Step-Town Son.
Yeah, I loved her.
She was lovely.
Yeah, she had amazing eyes.
She did. She had her dad's eyes that were big, great big.
Yeah.
So could you maybe, Liam, how did the process go where you became his apprentice?
It was basically that, I heard about the tryout, I got the page, I did the page, I got round to see him, and then he said, when I was 17, come and spend the summer with me, summer holiday. So I spent a month just there, painting and doing. I did. Did you have the one with the waterfall?
Yeah, I think
There's this one that I did when I was actually 17 and I was first trying out with Don. What I've found out over the years is I'm a good.
There it is on the left hand.
Oh yes, so that one on the left there is one I painted that when I was 17 at Don's studio, and he saw that and went, "Yeah, you can paint my style. I can train you. I can get you there." Because my sort of next, in my view, Chris has a much better imagination than I have. He's very good with all the details, and I'm very good at mimicking styles and absorbing them.
And you're better at anatomy than me.
Well, I don't know. Well, I mean, look, how can you? That's bloody amazing. There was not much in it, to be fair. I was just a year older and a little better at imitating Don. That's about it.
Oh, you'll find it amusing to say. Occasionally, I pop round to say hello to Don's widow. Usually around the time of his death, bring her a bunch of flowers and all that. And even the last time I saw her a couple of weeks ago, she was like, "Oh yeah, Don and I never thought you were any good. We thought Liam was more talented." I was like, "Thanks."
He did change his mind. He was so proud of where Chris went. And the last few times I saw Don would be like, "Yeah, Chris, brilliant."
Oh, thank you. I never heard that from him.
Oh no, he was really impressed.
Oh,
yeah.
cool. She did say, but you did improve. I was like, oh, thanks.
That's classic Don. So but we've both got our stories. I told this a little earlier on, but there was a time I was in, because basically for the year of trying out with him, the learning process was I would have Don's original here, and I would be copying it, absolutely brushstroke for brushstroke to get it as identical. And I used to have loads of them. They were sadly all destroyed in a bloody leaking radiator accident, which I don't like to think about. But on one occasion, there was I changed one of the characters. Only tiny, he was like that big, but I made him bald because he looked like my dad. And Don, being eagle-eyed, he came over my shoulder and he went, "What have you done? Why have you done that? You've not copied it." I said, "Well, it looks like my dad." He said, "You're not here to please my dad." And I said, "It's my birthday." It was.
He could be brutal. He could be brutal. Yeah.
He was being particularly grumpy that day.
Yes. I remember once I borrowed his compass for drawing circles, and I put it back on his desk, and both of us had forgotten that I'd put it back on his desk. He goes, "Where's my compass?" And he's like, I don't know. And I was searching all around my desk. I don't know. I said, I'm sorry. He goes, "Don't be sorry, just find it." I was like, "Oh God!" But I actually had it, and then he went back and sat at his desk, and there it was. Like, "Oh yeah, I've got it." I think we were terrified of him.
Yeah. Well, the most terrifying, actually, I have to say, the way that the black lines around the panels. He'd spent 2 weeks of painting a bloody page, beautiful, and then my job was to take a mapping pen. I don't know if you know what a mapping pen is. It's 2 bits of metal like this, and you put a blob of ink in the middle of it, and it's just hanging there, India ink, and then you have to rule using that.
Yeah.
Like a 5mm of distance, and if you've got 5mm and a little blob of ink hanging, that is a terrifying. On Don Lawrence's original art.
Yeah.
Thankfully, I
this one.
Yeah, I never, and I don't know how I didn't completely spill ink or smudge it or whatever. It was terrifying. That one there as well, Pat. Sorry with the clap.
No.
That one, that's me painting, based on a pencil. This is part of what I was going to take over. So that was, Don said when I did that, he said that's the best thing you've ever done. Which is, he loved that one. And it was obviously I was trying to make it a little bit more modern and appealing to a slightly younger audience. We were all wearing those great big boots back in 2001.
So,
Getting a tattoo, which was based on the, obviously on the planet. I thought, oh, that'd be cool if you had a tattoo based on, you know, the eye of.
So what did Donald do on that?
He did the pencil rough.
Yeah. Okay.
I didn't paint over it. It was like on a separate layout. So it was taken from a rough that he did. But all the drawing on there is neat.
What sort of, when you were working with him, Chris, what sort of tasks did you do?
That's pretty much at the beginning the same as Liam, where I'd have to do painstakingly accurate recreations of his work and of artists he thought I should be checking out.
Yeah, Don, Brian Bolland.
Yeah, and Mobius.
Me too.
Well, Don introduced me to the work of Mobius, who I hadn't seen before, and he says, "Oh, do you know this guy?" And I thought, "No." I opened up, and the first thing I said was, "Wow, this guy's just like Colin Wilson." And then I realised it was the other way around.
Yeah.
And so he, it might have been a mistake on Don's part, because I'm afraid Mobius is my favourite artist, and I bloody love him. But Don's a very close second.
Yeah.
And actually, I was there. Don kind of knew Mobius, and I was with the pair of them at a convention once, and Mobius came to UK 88, I think.
UK 88.
Yeah,
I was there.
Yeah.
I probably met you there.
Yeah, and Don was having a chat with Mobius, and I'd gone along as Don's sort of squire, and I was looking up at these two gods, and I was like, what am I doing here? It's Mobius and Don Lawrence. It's amazing. And Don was teasing Mobius because Don hated, despite having invented Marvel Man, he hated superheroes with an absolute passion. He really didn't want me to draw superheroes ever or anything. But Mobius had just done The Silver Surfer, and Don was teasing it. He's going, "Come on, Jean, what are you doing that rubbish for? You're way better than that."
He didn't like that one.
No. And Jean was laughing along with it, going, "Oh, I'm sorry, Don. I promise I would never do it again."
He did like The Dark Knight though, which was interesting because I saw The Dark Knight. It was like being a fan of like really realistic, hyper detailed stuff, and I love Mobius too. I saw The Dark Knight for the first time. I didn't know Frank Miller's stuff. I hadn't seen I hadn't seen Ronin. I hadn't seen the Daredevil stuff or anything. And I didn't really get what he was doing immediately. I just saw the art and thought, well, this is rubbish. In the same way that I used to think that Kirby was rubbish. We both love Kirby now, and we both love Frank Miller's art as well. But I was showing it Don, and Don's like, "What do you think of it?" I said, "I think it's very good," because I was looking at it on a page-by-page basis in terms of the art. And Don goes, "You're wrong. Read it and tell me what you think." He said it's like poetry. It's minimalism. It's fantastic, and he really admired that.
So but going back, he was basically getting me to do recreations of people like Mobius, Bolland. I think I did a Colin Wilson one as well. Dave Gibbons recreated a page from Watchmen. I did that for the first 6 months, and it wasn't much fun. When he would make me do it like half up. I had to draw the recreation. He'd give me a comic, and I'd have to draw the recreation half again bigger.
Yeah.
So that basically involved getting a ruler and measuring. So like, suppose you've got a panel and a hand comes in through there. I had to like measure that distance and then with maths scale it up with a ruler. It was really slow, painstaking process. And I think that was the point really. He wasn't teaching me how to draw like Colin Wilson or Mobius. He was teaching me how to sit at a desk and work all day. He was teaching me the discipline of the job. And I did get in about 6 months thinking, I don't know if I can do this. It's doing my head in. It's so boring. It's so boring. But I hung in there. Yeah.
We're glad you did.
Oh, thank you. Cheers. And
Yes.
sorry, I think.
No, I was just going to say to the question about what the other stuff. So what I knew was Trigon Empire.
Yeah.
Then I discovered Storm. I'd stumbled across that first album, the Deep World.
Yeah, which I've got.
Um,
I've got the cover somewhere.
So I immediately bought it because it was Don,
Yeah.
and I recognised that he was the Trigon Empire artist, and so I bought that. And then when I met him, then I discovered, as used Marvel, Captain Marvel, Carl the Viking. That stuff was fantastic. Those two books they brought out recently, gorgeous, aren't they? And I also, quite recently, and I don't remember him ever talking about it, but the cowboy strips he did, the Wells Fargo strip, they're
That's come out.
amazing.
Yeah, those have come out as well.
Really?
So here's the deep.
Wells Fargo, and I think they're based on TV shows, but really, really good. Yeah,
There's the deep world cover, I think.
yeah.
There's some cowboy stuff in there. The Lone Ranger strip is in there somewhere.
Where is it? Is that Carl the Viking?
Yeah.
That's Carl.
Beautiful.
So
I
just
think-
the compass.
Yeah, I think the stuff I'm doing now there's some of that DNA in
His work's not dated. I don't think. I think if he drew Carl Viking now, it holds up. Doesn't look like a comic
always-
from the.
I'm always confused by people who say it's a bit stiff, and I don't get it.
No.
I don't see it. No.
Did you ever read any of the TV21s that we've got?
No, never did.
Is there?
Completely bypassed me.
Yeah, me too.
Because he did Tarzan in that.
Did he?
Yeah.
There's,
There's Tarzan. Go back.
okay, yeah, there's Tarzan. Distinctively done.
Yeah.
And he did Fireball XL5.
Yeah.
Actually,
Sorry.
Yeah.
and I was just going to go back one, and then there's an example of the layout. Oh, so these two, while we're on it, these are panels that I painted in the Living Planet. So I did all that one and the spaceship on the right. Occasionally let me paint a panel.
So, who's going to go to there we are. Here we are. There we are.
No, thanks to Graham sitting there who sent me those images.
Graham's
They're
got-
so good, aren't they?
Yeah.
He loved Bellamy as well, didn't he? Obviously, he
yeah.
was inspired by Bellamy and Fred Hampson.
And Ron Embleton.
Ron Embleton in
Yeah, he was
particular.
his big rival, wasn't he?
Yeah, Ron died at some point in the year that I was there, and he was devastated by that. And that's when he told me that he said, we worked out that the average age of a comic strip artist, the lifespan of a comic strip artist is 46. Because they all kept dying because they all smoked like hell and drank and sat around and did nothing and were very stressed.
Yeah.
He said so, and he was 53 at the time, he said, I'm on borrowed time.
Oh, God.
We're definitely on borrowed time.
And can we, maybe Chris, you kindly sent me some pictures. These ones. Could you tell us
Beautiful,
these?
that's so
A
amazing.
few words about these.
That was for, there was, at one point, there was a mooted Trigon Empire TV show. Basically, at that point, Trigon Empire was still owned by IPC magazines, and they were sitting on a whole war chest of IP, like Robot Archie and Kelly's Eye and Steel Claw and the Trigon Empire. And this bloke was given the job of going through their IP and seeing what they can do with it. And he thought that the best shot was the Trigon Empire, which was it was just after Game of Thrones had come out, and he thought, well, this could be a Game of Thrones something. Romans in space. And
What did you paint these in?
It's digitally
They're
printed, yeah.
That's stunning.
Oh, cheers. So he got me to. They got some scripts done, proper finished scripts, and they got me to design the characters and modernise them a bit. And there's a bit of me doing a bit of my secret under the radar casting there, because that's Jack O'Connell. Is that his name? The actor. He was in '73. He's a ginger-haired actor.
Sure.
I thought he'd be a brilliant Janno.
Okay.
So I deliberately made him look like that. And they loved the idea. So yes, we're going to try and get him to be in it. And then at some point, Ridley Scott's company came on board, because Ridley Scott's a huge comic book fan.
Oh, really?
I mean, if you, the opening scenes in Alien, I'd just taken identical from a John Burns comic called Countdown.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he knows his comics, and he's also a huge Mobius fan, Ridley Scott.
Which you can see from his storyboards.
Yeah, so Ridley Scott was on board, Scott's company was on board, and at that point, I phoned them up for an update, saying, any movement on it? And they said, well, it's all going to change a bit, because we're actually going to sell the IP back to, we're going to sell it to Rebellion. And I said, but why are you doing that? And they said, well, we just don't think, we just want to just want to sell it all off in one go, the whole lot of the old comic book stuff. I said, well, what about the TV show? He said, oh, I'm sure they'll let us still make it. And I laughed at that point. I said, are you sure? I said, I'm not sure I would do that. And they said, that'll be fine. We'll come to an agreement that we can still make a TV show. And as I predicted, they sold it to Rebellion, and Rebellion was like, no, thank you.
They produced these books.
Yes,
yeah.
yes. I don't know why, but they just weren't interested.
Yeah. And Rebellion are trying to build their own TV.
And that was the end of that. They couldn't. It just brought the whole project to a complete dead hole. I was absolutely gutted because I obviously put so much work into it.
Yes, it's like we've both got these almost around sort of taking over Don material stories.
Yeah.
On that point, shall we open it up to any questions from the audience? Front row first.
Oh, thanks. I was wondering to know more about Liam, how you end up coming back to help out Don finish the last story.
I was living in Brighton at the time. He was still in Polegate. We were always in touch because we'd become dear friends. Very good friends. So whenever we popped over to Eastbourne, we'd go and see Liz and Don. Basically, I had a big hole in my workload. I'd come off Spawn the Dark Ages. That sort of ended in an unexpected way, and suddenly I had no work, and Don was stuck with these last 10 pages, and we'd been to see him, and he said, well, maybe we can figure it out, that you can come and work with me again. And obviously he knew that I was close enough, and I was a bit better by then than I had been, at 17, 18. So yeah, I just went back to work. So it's good.
Do you feel Don Lawrence, especially in the UK, is a bit underrated? Because I'm from the Netherlands, and if you would have, we are from the Netherlands, sorry. If you would have had a panel at a Comic-Con in the Netherlands like this, they would be hanging from the rafters. Like Don Lawrence is like the god of comics in the Netherlands. And do you feel like it's why Don Lawrence is a little bit underappreciated in the UK? Or is he underappreciated in the UK?
I was saying earlier on that I think some of it is the bad translations. It never got them right. It would go into younger age group comics for a start. So things like Look and Learn magazine, or these were old establishment things. So Vulcan was great, but it had a lot of old world stuff around it. It wasn't particularly cool when you got 2000 AD. Don's stuff was the best thing in it. Obviously, we have huge affection for Kelly's Eye, but Steel Claw and all those things in it. But they were still a little bit old-fashioned compared to what was happening. This very punk thing happening in 2000 AD. And I think they really suffered from the translations. Don hated them. He didn't read any of them, did he?
And it's very funny that you say that, because especially his work on Storm in the Netherlands, that caused the revolution. That was really like people were going out there like, what what's happening? What?
Yeah, I don't think it had. 2008 was very edgy and anti. It's a sort of anti-comic. You know, Dredd was an anti-hero. So there was that appealed to us, a very British thing. This sort of cynicism. Storm was not cynical at all, and also like when it sort of became really big. You go back at the early ones, the Deep World is just a ridiculous thing. You know, they've just gone through the eye of the. There's no explanation of anything, and Marduk's just this very kind of pantomime villain that's got no kind of. There's very little to Marduk. You don't get any motive at all. You know, nothing. He's just like It's just like a cartoon. You know. So it was a weird mix of like adult. So you got. Red hair, obviously, we all had a crush on red hair, and she's always getting the clothes off. Which, when you're 15, is quite.
Like this picture.
You know, that boys respond to that.
I constantly nagged Don to do a Judge Dredd, and he always agreed and goes, yeah, I'd love to do that one day.
Yeah.
I said, it's only 6 pages,
Yeah.
you'd knock it out of the park. And for a while, I was drawing Judge Dredd whilst still being in Don's studio, and I was really struggling with a page, and I don't know, he must have been bored of it, because he picked up one of his blank bits of, is it CS10? Because here's how I do it. He basically laid out the page for me, and it was Don drawing Judge Dredd, and I thought, I've always wanted to see this, and then he said, and he showed me, he do something like that, and then he took it back, went to his desk and rubbed it all out and started drawing a Storm page on it. So
It was the page that didn't happen.
yeah, I know.
I don't know. Was there much? I think was it only this cover that
Yeah.
happened?
What's the story there?
They just didn't think. Well, first of all, there's another version which I'm sure I saw a layout for it, where the old lady had a scythe. She was cutting one of the heads off with a scythe. She was like really swinging this scythe. It was quite violent looking. And so he sent off, and they said, no, that's way too violent. Make her do something nice like that, watering them. And so they did that, and they just thought, oh, no, that's really boring. And so they got Carlos Esguerra I think they took a picture for one of Carlos's panels and stuck that on over the top instead.
You can see it's been stuck on.
Yeah. That's exactly the only two things I ever did, I think.
Yeah.
Because Don did some work. Was it Don? Did he do things like action and battle? He's done some. Well, maybe it's Fury, but there was nothing of Don's, I don't think, in 2008. Does anyone remember?
He did a couple of action covers.
Okay.
Yeah.
Was it
I don't remember
German
the
soldiers?
series.
Yeah. He did a Hellman cover, didn't he? A dredger.
Yeah. Any other questions? Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, it's funny because when I was working with him on the Von Neumann, even on the Living Planet, he said, I want to stop because I want to be a maritime artist. And I know that he kept saying that. Yeah. It's like he never got anywhere near to being a maritime artist, did he? And he just kept doing it.
I was going to find, I think you said...
Oh, that was his
yeah.
that was his first ever colour page.
Really?
Yeah, because this came at the end of Carl the Viking, and so this was an annual story, so they could push the budget out a bit, and so that's the first ever colour page ever painted. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, and he was doing it in coloured inks to start with, wasn't he? Which was, quite unforgiving because you can't really rub it out. You've got to get it right.
Because it gives me the vibe of some of the Frank Hampsons.
Yeah,
Later
that's
colours.
totally inspired by that.
Yeah.
But when he moved to gouache, designers gouache, he had more control over it because he could, if he made a mistake, you could just get water on it and move the paint around a bit.
So this was his first colour work.
Yeah.
So up to then he had just done
Yeah.
Carl the Viking in
Yeah.
black and white.
Yeah.
Because I think this page is in
A line annual
Yeah.
65, I think.
and also in the Rebellions reprints. I think maybe the second or the third volume, whichever, the latter one. Any other questions? The back.
So it's just like such a crazy magical story that you guys were able to be mentored, and I've often wondered how many other, or if there were any other 80s artists that were coming up that were able to be mentored with these big legendary artists from the 60s or the 70s. Are there any other stories like yours out there that you know of, or other people that maybe even were also mentored by Don?
Yeah, after me there was a young man called Dominic, but for whatever reason he didn't pursue comic book work, but he went into the computer game industry, and after like decades I've reconnected with this guy, because eventually, in order to like repay the comic will, you know, wheel destiny, whatever, I've taken on apprentices, and one of them was a young girl called Lauren, and she didn't go into comics, she went into animation instead, and she's got a job at a computer game firm, and the boss of the company she's working for is that same Dominic who worked with Don Lawrence. So it's incredible how these this sort of little world of Don has created around here. We're all sort of interconnecting all the time. As for other ones, the only one I can think of is I think the artist Dave Taylor was Mobius's apprentice for a bit.
But I'm also starting to realize from your earlier comment of just how young they all died, that there couldn't have been a lot of opportunities.
No.
Because of a high mortality rate.
And I think didn't Brian Bolland did a similar thing with Sidney Jordan?
And I think Brian has helped Steve Austin, because I think Steve Austin was...
The violin man?
No, Steve Austin, not Stone Cold either, but Steve Austin, who's in, I think he was a business manager at the college, and Brian was was playing badminton or something, and it was one of those...
No, because I was the Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Yeah. Any other questions? Okay.
It sounds like Dave had a similar experience with Mobius as we had with Don, like the constant fear of not pleasing his idol and his master.
Oh, quickly, I did say right at the beginning about the corridor that formed the thing, and that was I know, try and keep it short, but it was one of the bits of advice that I got from Don that totally changed the way and how I still think about comics, and it was also partly one of his scary moments, where he gave me a script and he said, right, this time draw it from your own head and let's see how you get on, and at the second panel was two of the characters walking down a corridor, and he stood behind me and chuckled. And I said, what? He said, what's that? I said, it's a corridor. He said, it's not a corridor, it's just two people walking along an empty room. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, where are they going? Why, you don't know where they've come from, you don't know where they're going to. And where is this empty box? I said, well, it's in the palace. Well, you can't tell it's in the palace, you need to put this in. He said, what's it made of? I said, well, I hadn't even thought about it. And he said, well, it could be made of anything. It could be made of meat, it could be made of, polystyrene, it could be made of metal. He said, and then one of his big beefs about American comics was he said, it looks like everything's made of the same material, everything's made of plastic. He said, and so I think both of us bring a lot of texture in our work, because we're always thinking about, and even then, it's like you think about the rocks. If you're drawing rocks, it's not that rocks aren't one kind of thing. There are many layers of different kind of rock. So you end up with a different strata, and all of those things and that way of thinking has all come from Don, making me think of like, where have they come from? Is there a way that I can allude to that, where they've been and where they're going? Is this going to be a happy place? Is this a brighter place they're coming to? Are they going somewhere dark? And does it have to be side on? How do you make the room interesting? It doesn't have to be square, it could be a meandering, a million different layers about the world building. And that was Don being terrifying that made me learn that lesson.
Any question at the back?
Yeah, so Chris, actually, Ministry of Space, to me that's got a very sort of 60s look about it. What, I mean, I'm assuming that was obviously deliberate, but did you go for a particular artist or did you blend it? Was it because, you know, the story's kind of set in the sort of 60s?
Oh yeah. I mean, it was sold to me as very much like a dark version of Dan Dare, set in a Dan Dare style way. So I was looking a lot at. I was about to say Frank Hampton, but actually probably looking at Don Harley's Dan Dare a lot more at that point, because I think Spaceship Away was just coming out at the same time, and they brought Don Harley out of retirement to do Dan Dare. So I was looking at his work quite a lot, generally hoping that, you know, no one else realised that Don Harley was still available, you know. Yeah, but that was definitely a throwback.
That was great.
Oh, thank you.
I wanted to find out, by paying it forward and taking on apprentices, did you incorporate many of his practices from when you were apprentice?
No, I couldn't bring myself to be that brutal, really. No, I'm completely different. I try to be a bit more, because I'm aware of how crushing it can be. I wanted to try a different approach, be a bit more gentle. I think Lawrence had a success, but none of them have had success in comics. They've all gone into other things, like, as I said, Lawrence got into computer game animation, and there's a guy called Carl who's mainly into sort of silkscreen poster design, like, you know, the alternative movie posters. He's a big name in that world. He earns way more money than me. It's so annoying. And yeah, and he does. Apparently, board games are really huge now, and he does board game packaging as well. So neither of them have gone into comics. There have been I've had a few sort of work. I usually take on a work experience person every now and then, but none of them have gone into it. Oh, there's a third girl. Yes, what am I talking about? There's Mia, who actually, she's now working for the same computer game company as Lauren. So that's another little, you know, cog in the machine as well. But she wanted to be a manga artist, so it was very hard for me to. It's not something I know much about, really. And I said to her, I usually say the same thing that Don said to me. It's like, I can't teach you to draw. Only you can teach yourself to draw. I have given the same speech that he gave me, and he's like, I can give you the space where you can teach yourself to draw, and I can give you techniques and little exercises. So in that respect, yeah, I have copied his process of teaching, but I haven't copied his style of criticism.
And Liam, do you teach a course sometimes?
Well, I did this Domestica course, an online course, which is still going. It's available for a very reasonable price. But I never had enough space in my studio, sadly, to be able to take anyone on. And nobody ever asked, to be honest. Actually, a couple of people did, but they were so shockingly, like, it's like, sometimes, I hate to say it, but sometimes people are very deluded about their ability, you know, and they think they're great. Or they'll tell you, it's like, I mean, I had one guy at a con basically say, telling me how my work could be better, and that if he came and worked as my apprentice, he could help me be better. And then you look at his work, and it was just like, oh my God, you have no idea how bad you are, you know. And that's the whole thing about, like, I remember reading Boris Vallejo once saying, you know, if you can't see what's wrong in your work, then I can't tell you. And Don was kind of that school. And so if someone's that kind of deluded, and I couldn't be mean as well, I'm also like, so you tried to be gentle, but I just never had the room in the studio, but I've tried to help either by being supportive online or by, through various publishing ventures and on tour. I gave a lot of opportunities So we sort of opened the doors, and I would always be at cons, sort of just basically giving people opportunities. And in the framework of that, then I definitely, you know, I would be advising and helping and you know, trying to sort of guide off the sidelines and that kind of thing. It's ongoing. I don't think you can help it really. It's like yeah.
One last question.
Do you ever see yourself returning to Trigian Empire or Storm? Is there a chance, a hope, or?
There's been discussions, but for me it's a no. I'd love to, but I'd rather put my efforts into something creator-owned. That if I was to do go back to Trigian Empire, I wouldn't see the benefit of it. Someone else would, another, you know, the rebellion would see the benefit of it. And at this point, I'm trying to stick to my own creator-owned projects. In that way, if they do get picked up, you know, like for a film or a TV show, I'm going to reap the rewards for it. Really. I mean, I'll always occasionally go and do a Judge Dredd or something, but to commit to a big long series like the Trigian Empire would need, they wouldn't be paying me enough to make it worthwhile, really.
Yeah, that's the truth, unfortunately. I did pitch a Red Hair story after the Von Neumann machine. I'd like the idea of doing just an Ember 40-pager, and I don't think anyone picked up on it. I did a whole plot for it, and Don was into the idea. He really liked it. In a way, I'd be more interested in doing a Red Hair one-shot or a Nomad one-shot. There's another story about a Nomad, which we probably won't talk about here, but catches on the sly.
Yeah, not on record.
Not on record. Not yet.
So, should we wrap it? And could you just say how can people get in touch? I have a box set of on-call books, and so other books of your self-published art, etc. So how do people? Do you take commissions? All that sort of socials.
All the above, really. Yeah. I've got a new comic coming out in July called Paranoid Gardens. So everyone rush out and buy that.
Yeah.
I've got my Stonehenge book, which won the award last night. I'm so pleased. And it's up for an Eisner, so I'm sort of super excited. There's a few copies left in there. If anyone's interested, that's kind of I think that's the thing, Don. I think Don would want us to go on and make our own things.
Yeah.
At this point, you know, that's what he had done, and he was very proud of that with Storm. It was his baby, and I know that he would. You know, he loved us. We loved him. We were family.
Yeah, that's the thing I didn't say really. You did feel part of the family when you were over in his studio in Jonestown, because his wife was lovely, and all their sons and daughters were really nice people.
And Liz's mum eventually lived upstairs in the studio.
Yeah.
And my daughter used to adore her because she just liked old ladies when she was little.
Yeah. It was such a lovely, cosy atmosphere over there.
There he is. So, thank you very much. Can we have a warm round of applause for Chris and Liam? Thank you very much, yes. I went to UCAC 88 and I've got a poster, and I've probably posted it, you've probably seen this. And there's a signature from Don Lawrence, a little storm, and there's a little head with spiky hair, and it's C. Weston.
Wow!
Yeah.
Amazing.
Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Cheers. It's worth a lot of money now.
Yeah, and there's a bit.